Robert Burns was born in 1759 in Alloway, near the town of Ayr in Ayrshire in southwest Scotland. This song is about, concerns the ministers of Ayrshire. And when he wrote it, he had recently relocated to Ellisline Farm near Dumfries, 6 miles from Dumfries. But he kept up with the news of his old native shire, as he says in the song. The first minister of the church in Ayr was William Dalrymple, who's called Drimple Mild in the song, a moderate minister, who actually baptized Burns. There's a lot of personal touches in this song. And the second charge was the Reverend Dr. William McGill, thoughtful man, published a book, 500-page book called A Practical Essay on the Death of Jesus Christ, in which he basically said that Jesus didn't come here to offer himself as a sacrifice, but to preach love, and his killing was a result of living his life with integrity. This gradually brewed some hostility among the Calvinist ministers of the district, and the one who started the whole fox hunt against McGill for heresy, for his heretic blast. His book was William Peebles of Newton upon Ayr, and he gave a sermon on the anniversary, the centenary of the glorious revolution of William and Mary of 1688, and condemning McGill for heresy in his sermon, and also wrote a poem about the glorious revolution, and it had the line, "and bound in liberty's endearing chain." Burns wasn't too impressed by the man's poetry. I'm going to get to this. This is Burns's tune, which has never been published. He indicated it on 4 manuscripts. It's called Push About the Brisk Bowl. Mentioned early, the sympathetic characters are mentioned early, Dalrymple, McGill, and Provost John was John Ballantyne, then Provost of Ayr, and Orator Bob is the lawyer Robert Aiken, and these were early supporters of Burns and his poetry, really friends. I'll go over who the ministers were after I sing it. War means worse in Scots. Meikle war is much worse, nae war is no worse. I'll go over more words later, but you should probably know aidle, A-I-D-L-E. Aidle is, if you're mucking out a byre, a pig shed, it's the water mixed with dung is called aidle. Here we go. Orthodox, Orthodox, we believe in John Knox. Let me sound an alarm to your conscience. A heretic blast has been blown in the West, that what is not sense must be nonsense. Orthodox, that what is not sense must be nonsense. Dr. Mac, ye should streek on a rack, to strike evil-doers wi' terror, to join faith and sense upon ony pretence, was heretic damnable error. Dr. Mac was heretic damnable error. To never, it was mad, I declare, to meddle we mischief a-brewing. Provost John is still deaf to the church's relief, and Orator Bob is its ruin to never, and Orator Bob is its ruin. Trimple mild, though your heart's like a child, and your life like the new driven snaw, yet that winna save ye, old Satan must have ye, for preaching that three's ane and twa. Trimple mild, for preaching that three's ane and twa. Calvin's sons, seize your spiritual guns, ammunition ye never can need. Your hearts are the stuff, will be powder enough, and your skulls are a store whoso lead. Calvin's sons, your skulls are a store whoso lead. Rumble John, mount the steps where you groan, cry the book is wi' heresy crammed, then lug out your ladle, deal brimstone like adel, and roar every note to the damned. Rumble John, and roar every note to the damned. Simper James, leave the fair Kelly dames, there's a holier chase in your view. I'll lay on your heed that the pack you'll soon lead, for puppies like you there's but few. Simper James, for puppies like you there's but few. Sing it sonny, are you heard in the penny, unconscious what danger awaits? Where you jump, yell and howl, alarm every soul, for Hannibal's just at your gates. Sing it sonny, for Hannibal's just at your gates. Andrew Gowk, you may slander the book, and the book not the war, let me tell you. You are rich and look big, but lay by hat and wig, and you'll hae a calf's heed of small value. Andrew Gowk, you'll hae a calf's heed of small value. Poet Willie, gie the doctor a volley, wi' your liberty's chain and your wit. Or Pegasus' side, ye ne'er laid astride, ye only stood by where he shit. Poet Willie, ye only stood by where he shit. Barstini, what mean ye, if you'll meddle nae mair with the matter? Ye may hae some pretence, man, to havens and sense, man, we people what ken ye nae better. Barstini, we people what ken ye nae better. Jamie Goose, he hae made but ruse, so hunting the wicked lieutenant. But the doctor's your mark for the Lord's holy ark. He has coopered and caught a wrong pennant. Jamie Goose, he has coopered and caught a wrong pennant. Davy Rant, wi' a face like a sont, and a heart that would poison a hog. Raise an impudent roar like a breakerly shore, or the Kirk will be tent in a bog. Davy Rant, or the Kirk will be tent in a bog. Muirland Jock, whom the Lord made a rock, take crush common sense for her sins. If ill manners were wit, there's no mortal so fit. Take and found the poor doctor at Ains. Muirland Jock, take and found the poor doctor at Ains. Says Knockside, we're turkey cock pride. Oh man, but small is your share. If the figure it's true, even your face mun allow, and your friends darena say ye mair. Says Knockside, your friends darena say ye mair. Daddy old, there's a tod in the fold, a tod mickle war than a clerk. Though ye do little skaith, ye'll be in at the teeth, for if ye canna bite, ye can bark. Daddy old, if ye canna bite, ye can bark. Holy well, there was weight to your skull when ye pilfered the alms of the poor. The timber is scant when you're ta'en for a saint. Wha should swing in a rape for an oor? Holy well, wha should swing in a rape for an oor? Poet Burns, wi' your priest scalp in turns, why desert ye your old native shire? Your muse is a gypsy, even though she were tipsy, she could cause nae war than we are. Poet Burns, she could cause nae war than we are. The Kirk's Alarm. Church's Alarm. Let me go through some of the words and tell you who these people were. Rumble John, dealing the auld, was John Russell of Kilmarnock. He was a terrifying fire and brimstone preacher. Some of these ministers were written about by Burns in other poems. The Holy Fair, the Holy Tulsey, the Ordination, local characters, rock stars of the clergy, these people. James McKinley, that's Simper James of Kilmarnock. Leave the Fair, Killy Dames, Killy's Kilmarnock. I guess he had an eye. Sing It Sawney is Alexander Moody of Rickertoon, and he spells that S-I-N-G-E-T, so I'm not sure what that reference is. Andrew Gauk is Andrew Mitchell of Moncton, and a Gauk is a cuckoo or fool. Andrew Gauk. Poet Willie again is William Peebles, who gets one of the big verses. Give the doctor a volley with your liberty's chain. He's quoting his poem there in your wit. Bar Steenie is Stephen Young of Bar. You may have some pretence man to havens and sense man. Havens is manners, what we'd call manners. Next verse is, there's a lot to this one. Minister of New Cumnock was James Young, or Jamie Goose here. He'd conducted an ecclesiastical prosecution of the son-in-law of Burns's friend John Logan, who received one of these manuscripts of the song. Married his, he was a lieutenant and he married Griselle Logan. So, Jamie Goose, ye made but toom roos, empty show of hunting the wicked lieutenant, as they say in the UK. But the doctor's your mark for the Lord's holy ark. He has coopert and cawed a rang pinint. Young's father was a cooper, a barrel maker in Falkirk. So a lot of references in there. And cawed is to drive. He's driven a wrong pin in the holy ark. So Davy Rant is David Grant of Ochiltree. And there was an earlier version of that verse that I'll tell you. Davy bluster, for a saint if you muster, it's a sign they're no nice recruits. They're not fussy about recruits. Yet to worth, to be just, royal blood you might boast, if the ass were the king of the brutes, Davy Bluster. Cessnock's side. If the figure is true, even your fays mun allow, even your foes must allow. Merlin Jock. Oh, that was George Smith of Galston. It's Cessnock's side or Irvine side and other versions of it. I like the knock with the turkey cock rhyme there. Merlin Jock is John Shepherd of Muirkirk. If ill manners were wit, there's no mortal so fit. I guess he used to be rude to people when he thought he was being funny. Charming. So, Daddy Old. Daddy Old. There's a Todd in the fold. There's a fox in the fold. This is William Old, the minister of Mauchline, and he was the man charged with reading out Burns in church for 3 straight weeks for fornication. And he then baptized the fruits of this fornication, the first pair of twins of Burns and Jean Armour, Robert and Jean, who unfortunately died early in childhood. So Daddy Old, there's a Todd in the fold, a fox in the fold, a Todd meikle waur than the clerk, a Todd much worse than the clerk. His clerk was a church elder, William Fisher, and this is the subject of the famous poem, Holy Willie's Prayer. Though you do little scathe, you'll be in at the daith. You do little harm. We have the word unscathed. You do little scathe, you'll be in at the daith, for if you cannot bite, you can bark. Holy Will, that's the same man, William Fisher. There was wit in your skull when you pilfered the alms of the poor. The timber is scant when you're taken for a saint who should swing in a rope for an hour. Burns is writing the nastiest stuff, and he can't help but write beautifully. Listen to the short eyes. Holy well, they put a little U in his gut, so it's like, holy well, there was wet to your skull when you pilfered the alms of the poor. The timber is scant when you're ta'en for a saint, or should swing in a rape for an hour. Holy well. So there's all those short eyes in there. Poet Burns, we a priest scalp in turns, smacking. Why desert your old native shire? Your muse is a gypsy, even though she were tipsy, she could call us no worse than we are. So, there are 9 manuscripts of this. They're all different. He has different verse orders, different phrasings, but they grow into something similar. I collated 3 of them. The only one with the Holy Will verse is published by Thomas Stewart in 1799, and he was publishing from manuscripts given him by his uncle, or obtained from his uncle, John Richmond, who was a close friend of Burns. The Glenn Riddell manuscript was made for his friend Robert Riddell, and that's the last version. That has the Davy Rant verse in it, and then the Huntington Library manuscript, which I don't know which of his friends received that, but I suspect it was Robert Calhoun. I was able to get a copy from the Huntington Library in California, and on the back of the Kirk's Alarm was most of it faded out, but a naughty little piece from the Merry Muses of Caledonia. I didn't know there was a manuscript of it. It's called Ur John's Brak Yestrin. So Cleghorn got a lot of Burns's bawdry. Anyway, we're getting into the weeds here, but I wanted to talk about the melody and why it wasn't published. So there are 9 manuscripts, 2 print sources. Tunes are named on 7 of these. Push About the Brisk Bowl that I just sang you is named on 4, and it was on the early one. So you think that people might publish that melody. But in 1897, Henley and Henderson published the Centenary Burns, these eminent Victorians. They said they think Burns's motives for choosing the tunes were chiefly sarcastic and that they didn't fit the rhythm of the verses. James Dick, they didn't publish tunes anyway. James Dick in 1903 trumpeted that he was publishing Burns songs to the original melodies to which they were written. He claims in there that Burns named 5 tunes. There were actually 4. Dick got a lot of things wrong, but nothing Nothing more wrong than this. So he names the 4 tunes that Burns wrote to, and then says none of them fit the rhythm. I think the tune that Burns had in his mind but couldn't quite think of was this one: "Prepare, my dear brethren, to the tavern let us fly." So he assisted the feeble-minded bard by putting a tune he wanted with the song. It's a light-hearted tune Burns wrote, "No churchman am I" to it. It doesn't do much for the satire. Anyway, on and on. James Kinsley in 1968 says, certainly a more rigorous scholar than James Dick, he said, "Well, of the tunes mentioned, none of them really fit the rhythm. James Dick suggests you could sing it to this tune." And he simply prints it without a tune. So if you buy his vast book of commentary, you might see that. So let me tell you about this. Push About the Brisk Bowl, mentioned in 4 manuscripts, is in a book of English and Italian songs arranged by James Oswald, to whom Burns wrote to more of his melodies than any other composer or tunesmith. He loved his books, and Burns was a mad collector of tune books. So that's where we got the tune, and it's very clearly illustrated in that tune book because it has lyrics, how to fit it to the melody, because you jump that octave and come back down on the same word. It's not rocket science. The other tunes mentioned, he wrote to Frances Dunlop, who's sort of a literary mother figure to him, descendant of William Wallace, and not the best counselor on his poetry, but they were close correspondents for a good while. She got an early draft with fewer verses, and he said, "If I finish this, I mean to run off 2 or 3 dozen and send them anonymously to Ayrshire, to people on both sides of the question." One can imagine these ministers received copies. Anyway, there is an extant copy of a broadside called the Ayrshire Garland. Other manuscripts call this the Kirk of Scotland's Garland. It was just a garland meant verses, you know. So the Ayrshire Garland mentioned the tune "The Vicar and Moses," which was published in a popular songbook of the day, which more people would have had access to it or known that melody. And then he mentioned 2 other melodies in letters and manuscripts. One was "Come Rouse, Brother Sportsman." I think he sent that one to Lady Elizabeth Cunningham, and "The Hounds Are All Out." So these are clearly, they go with the fox hunt. And I was able to track down all 4 of these melodies and match them all to the lyric in an evening. I mean, it wasn't terribly difficult to fit them to the rhythm. So this is one example of the endemic attitude of condescension and dismissal among Burns's musical scholarship, of his musical authority. And Burns, in my view, and my view is an informed one because I've written more than 400 songs and learned and performed thousands and taught songwriting and studied the craft for the last 50 plus years. Burns was an absolute master of song prosody. He played the fiddle, collected tune books, and he would get a tune in his ear, in his body, and take it for a walk before he would write to it, usually. He describes his process in a letter to George Thompson. So his musical choices are to be respected.